This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good day, everyone. We're coming on the air with breaking news. The jury in the Bill Cosby sexual assault trial has reached a verdict. NBC's Stephanie Gosk has been covering the trial. Let's get right to her. Stephanie, we know there are 3 counts here. What do we know?
Lester, Bill Cosby has been found guilty on all 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault. Each one of these counts has up to a 10-year prison sentence. I'm going to go through each one of them for you. The first, count 1, is just straight sexual assault. Count 2 was sexual assault while Andrea Constand was unconscious. The third was sexual assault while substantially impaired. Again, that verdict, guilty on all 3 counts.
And Stephanie, the jury had requested a readback of some key testimony yesterday. Did any of it seem to be pointing in the direction of guilt?
It was tough to know for sure, Lester, but they asked for the complete testimony of Marguerite Jackson, who was not in the first trial. She was a defense witness. She had come forward and said that Andrea Constand told her in 2004, after the alleged incident, that she could actually get some money out of a Hollywood star if she had told a story about being sexually assaulted. Obviously, the jury wanted to listen to her testimony again and see if it was believable. The second thing they asked for, and this is key, was a piece of Bill Cosby's deposition from 2005 and 2006, where he told both attorneys for both sides that he had bought Quaaludes in the 70s with the purpose of giving them to young women for the purpose of having sex. Both of those key pieces of the trial being reread to the jury last night and this morning.
All right, Stephanie Goss, the 7 men, 5 women jury members deliberated about 14 hours. They got the case a little over 24 hours ago, and again delivering a guilty verdicts on 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault against Ms. Constand. We want to go right now to NBC's Kate Snow, who has been working the Cosby story for a number of years and famously sat down with a number of his accusers. What are you hearing right now, Kate?
Well, I'm reaching out to all of those that we talked to. But so far, Lester, I spoke with one a few minutes ago, just before the verdicts, who said that she was anxious and nervous and feeling like she wanted to throw up. They were incredibly worried. I spoke to a number of women who were worried, accusers of Cosby, that he would get off, that this would be a hung jury again. So obviously for them, this is huge news. This is something they've been fighting for, many of them, for years now. You remember that it all started to come out publicly back in the fall of 2014. By the summer of 2015, there were more than 50 women and individuals accusing Bill Cosby of various forms of crimes, everything from indecency all the way to rape. So this will be a very, very big victory for those women who have been calling for what they see as justice.
And again, this is the Constand case is the only one that went to a criminal trial. What are the status of the others? Was it a matter of statute of limitations that prevented them from making a criminal complaint?
Yeah, most of them, and many, you remember, are decades and decades old, even as much as 30 years or 40 years old, these allegations. Most of them are outside the statute of limitations criminally, but I should say that there are, I think, about 9 civil cases. That number may be a little off, but around 9 civil cases right now, Lester, that are still proceeding through the courts. And you can imagine this criminal conviction will have a lot of impact on those civil cases as well.
All right, Kate, stand by. We believe all the players in this trial are still in the courtroom. No cameras in the courtroom, so we, of course, got word through messages to the rest of our staff here about what is happening. We don't know exactly what is still transpiring in that courtroom or what the disposition of the sentencing. And let's go to Stephanie Goss. Do we know what will happen? Would Cosby be taken immediately into custody, or is that an object for discussion?
Yeah, it's up for discussion right now. We know that the prosecution is going to ask that his bail be revoked and that he be remanded instantly into custody. That'll be a decision that the judge will have to make. Otherwise, he would be out on bail until his sentencing. Again, that sentencing up to 30 years. You know, I think it's important also to point out here, Lester, much of this trial was the same as the last one. We talked about it being the same judge, the same courthouse, the same charges. But there were some significant differences over the course of the trial when it comes to the witnesses. And one of those big differences was that in this go-around, 5 witnesses, alleged victims, came forward and gave their testimony, and they were considered prior bad act witnesses to basically establish a kind of pattern of behavior. Those 5 women told their stories to the jury. Last trial, it was just one woman who did that. You have to wonder whether the compounded effect of their stories had some effect on this jury.
And also, Stephanie, in this particular trial, Mr. Mesereau, the lead attorney, lead defense attorney, went after Constant very, very hard. That was a bit of a risky legal strategy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I think, you know, when you talk about the context that we're in right now with the Me Too movement and all of that has happened since the first trial, there is a lot of sensitivity around victims of sexual abuse. They had to make a calculated assessment. Do they go after her story? Do they go after very hard the stories of those 5 women? They decided to do that. You have to wonder whether that, too, affected the position of these jurors.
And Kate, back to you. Again, there were these 5 other accusers who testified in this case. Their stories have become widely known now. I know it's hard to know how impactful that was, but it was significant and a big difference between this trial and the previous one.
Yeah, you have to imagine that it may have been significant for these jurors to hear a pattern of behavior, and that's how the prosecution tried to frame those 5 women. Lester, just now I'm getting a statement from one of those women, Janice Baker Kinney, who testified in this trial. She says, "I am overwhelmed with joy, relief, and gratitude. Joy that finally, with emphasis there, justice has been served. Relief that the years of this toxic chain of silence has been broken, and we can now move forward with our heads held high as survivors and not victims." That's a statement in part from Janice Baker Kinney, one of the women who testified. And as you say, no doubt that did have some impact on this jury. It is the big difference between this trial, as Stephanie said, and the last go-around.
And we're still waiting for the participants to leave the courthouse, perhaps make comments on the way out. But let's go back to Stephanie Gosk, who's getting a bit more of the color of what's happening inside. Stephanie?
That's right, Lester. We're hearing right now that some of the Cosby accusers, and these are women that attended every single day of this trial, they'd let out with loud sobs when they heard the verdict. The judge actually had to yell order in court, and some of these women were removed. Interestingly, Andrea Constant herself reportedly just looked forward with no real reaction on her face. So it sounds like there was quite a bit of emotion and drama once that verdict was read.
Yeah, I was looking at a monitor right before we went up on the air, and you could see women hugging each other. Hard to identify who they were, but there was clearly a lot of emotion spilling outside that courthouse. So, Stephanie, as we said, the issue of whether he's remanded is still a subject for the judge to rule on. But what are the potential sentences here?
So you have up to 10 years for each of these counts, which could result to up to 30 years for a sentence. As you know, Bill Cosby is in his 80s. He is not in poor health. Some of that's been up in dispute, whether that was a card played a little heavily by the defense in order to gain sympathy. But regardless, for people that have been watching him go out in and out of court this year and certainly last year, he's not in the greatest of health. A 30-year sentence could very well end up being a death sentence for Bill Cosby. And let's just think about that for a second. This is a man who burst on the scene as a comedian. He was the creator of the Fat Albert cartoon that really breached divides in race. He then went on to become one of those beloved TV characters in our history, becoming Dr. Cliff Huxtable. To see him here in this place to end his life in prison is an incredible fall from grace.
We saw an appearance at the court of his wife, Camille, who I think they married in 1964. Do we know if she is attending court today, if she was there for the verdict?
She was not there, and she has not been there for the deliberation. She was there for the closing statements, appearing just once, which is her appearances last time in the last trial. She appeared just once. She has been by his side this whole time. Also, you know, he has denied all of these charges from the very beginning. All of the allegations, as has Camille, who came out with a statement after the first trial calling it basically a witch hunt and a violation of her husband's constitutional rights. We are obviously in a very different place today, Lester.
Yeah, and we know that there has been a lot of emotion from this trial on various levels. You've seen, I suppose, some of it play out on the court steps there of Cosby defenders versus those who believed he was guilty. Can you give us a sense of what it has been like outside the courthouse?
There has been a lot of drama. You do have people that come out here when he walks out of the courthouse at the end of the day yelling "Free Cosby" and "Hey, hey, hey," and clearly supporters of him But you also have a group of people that have been protesting, a lot of them inspired by the Me Too movement. And you also have these accusers, these women that Kate has been talking to, that she interviewed. These are women who came forward in 2014 when their allegations were well beyond the statute of limitation. It's hard to overstate how much emotionally these women invested in this verdict, that this for them, it was riding on all of this. For them, it is going to be quite a day of redemption.
All right, and I want to go right back to Kate Snow again. Again, Kate, you have spoken to a number of the accusers who are unable to pursue criminal charges. What happens now? Is it simply a validation in this verdict?
Yeah, I think redemption, as Stephanie just said, but I will point out that a number of the women who have made these accusations have been fighting in state legislatures to change the statute of limitations on rape and other sexual crimes. They've been successful in a couple of places. In California, there is no longer I'm sorry for my phone ringing. In California, there's no longer any statute for rape. They were successful in Colorado as well, Lester, and they're trying to fight in other states now. So I assume this will give them new momentum and perhaps a rallying cry now to continue those fights.
Well, all right. Thank you, Kate. Obviously a big day. Bill Cosby, who was known for so long as America's dad from his role on The Cosby Show, found guilty on 3 counts related to sexual assault of Andrea Constant in a Pennsylvania court. We would expect the players in this trial, at least the defense and prosecutors, to speak at some point. We're going to go off right now. There is continuing coverage on MSNBC. We'll have full coverage and a wrap up tonight when I see you here for NBC Nightly News. For now, I'm Lester Holt in New York. Good day. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.